I believe that all of us as Sierra Leoneans will get into the serious business of an autopsy and take the critical steps necessary to avert the recurrence of what happened. But today, as I said, we are privileged to have with us the distinguished Minister of Health and Sanitation, Dr. Austin Dembi, and also the Director General for the National Disaster Management Agency, Lieutenant General Retired Brima Sise. As per the alerts that were issued, we'll be looking at the interventions, current and future, within the context of the response, the intervention by the National Disaster Management Agency, and it will please the Director General to give us a sense, provide critical highlights of where we are and what perhaps may be needed. And we'll also have the Minister of Health and Sanitation, Dr. Austin Dembi, to talk to us about the medical interventions, current and future. As we're aware, once the incident happened, the Honorable Vice President went to the scene and also visited hospitals. His Excellency the President also had to terminate his attendance at the summit to make sure that he leads this very important process. You're fully privy to the public notice or the press release that went out, and the government has been very grateful to the workers and all persons across the broad spectrum of our society who served as first responders, including our medical and nursing personnel, staff, officials and staff of the National Disaster Management Agency, local and international partners, and other well-meaning Sierra Leoneans who were at the scene to provide much needed intervention. And all of us as Sierra Leoneans, I believe, we are deeply, deeply and sincerely grateful to all of those efforts. It is now my pleasure to bring on Lieutenant General Brima Sise, retired, to give us critical highlights from the interventions made by the National Disaster Management Agency. Lieutenant General.
The Minister of Health and Sanitation, the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication, members of the Ministry of Health and the National Disaster Management Agency, the team that are here to do this presentation, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As stated earlier by the Deputy Minister, I am Lieutenant General Retired Brima Sise, the Director General of the National Disaster Management Agency. With me to do this presentation, I have the Director of Risk Reduction and Preparedness, Mr. Thomas Levy. I have the Director of Research, Monitoring and Evaluation, Mr. Bangura, and I have the Director of Communication, one of yours, Mr. Mohamed Elba. You have shown me that you are the owner of this place. Because we are here this morning. I'm sure when the Minister of Health is introducing, is presenting, they will do the introduction of the Minister of Health. We are here this morning as the invitation called for us to give you updates on our activities and plans concerning the Wellington fire accident, and at the same time tell you about NDMA mitigation actions, which might not be limited to the fire, but with other mitigation actions we've been engaged in over the period. We were launched on the 19th of November 2020, and there were just few days from our first year anniversary as an agency. Our strategy for this intervention or this response for the emergency that occurred on the 5th of November 2021 is divided into three key areas. We have the emergency phase, that is, we are looking at that between days 1 and 10. We have the stabilization, relief, and early response phase, and that is looked at from the 11 going on to the 30. And then the response and early recovery phase. That is looking at the period from day 31 to day 90. That's the 3 months. That's the normal practice of disaster responses. On that fateful day, the 5th of November 2021, we received a call of this massive fire between the hours of between 9 and 10. I immediately put together all the NDMA staff, our volunteers, and we headed for that location. So for day 1, we were able to coordinate the National Fire Force and the Port Authority Fire Service to come immediately to the scene to help in putting out the fire. We also contacted the National Emergency Medical Service, Ambulance Service, and they also responded immediately with ambulances. And these ambulances were meant actually to evacuate the injured to hospital for immediate medical attention. The Sierra Leone Red Cross Society played a major role in the evacuation of the dead and the wounded. They were all over the place in number, and medical teams as well. We safely transported 99 affected persons to 3 hospitals that night. We safely also transported 84 fatalities to Connaught Hospital morgue using ambulances, Sierra Leone Police pickup vehicles, and RSLAF pickup vehicles and trucks. The Vice President visited victims at the various hospitals. We also started at that time to do media engagement, especially local and international media, because we're getting so many calls. We also started our data collection system, because it is always nice to do the assessment immediately a disaster occurs. If not, you start missing it right from that point. So far, so good. The total number of affected people as reported by the Ministry of Health, they will give the complete details. We are just giving you the total figures. It's 299. Total fatalities is 138 as at today, and the total number admitted in hospitals is 59. The Ministry of Health will give the details. On day 2, we continued with our coordination with partners, both local and international. We started the clearing of the incident site with the support of SLRA, SLRSA, the Sierra Leone Police, National Fire Force. We immediately established the Incident Command Center and appointed an Incident Command Center Manager. The reason why we established Incident Command Centers immediately disasters like this occur is for victims and relations of those victims to have early access to information they might need on what is happening. The Vice President visited the accident site on day 2, and we conducted preliminary damage, loss, and needs assessments. Media and community engagements continued, both radio and using specifically the Tumac radio. Disaster Relief Fund account in Leones and United States dollars was made available to the public, because we were getting calls, people wanting to know how they can contribute to the relief efforts or the response efforts. The Ministry of Health received 6.6 tons of medical supplies from the World Health Organization. His Excellency arrived on that day in country, as the Deputy Minister stated. He cut short his engagement out of the country, and he immediately visited injured people at Connaught Hospital and 34 Military Hospital. Preliminary damage loss assessment, as stated in the report we also received from the Ministry of Health this morning. Dwelling houses affected 2, and those ones contain 5 households. When we say households, we mean family units. In our local parlance, we'll say the one day we eat in one pot. 5 shops and an office at the fuel station, 2 vehicles, the 2 main vehicles that were involved in the accident, and 20 other vehicles were completely burnt down. 48 motorbikes, mostly from Okada riders involved in the fuel scooping, were completely gutted by the fire, and 3 tricycles, commonly called kekes. This is just a picture of the clearing exercise that was done. You see the SLRA recovery truck just to get the place clear so that we allow traffic to flow. Activities to date continued. Day 3, our coordination continued. We held our first inter-pillar coordination meeting at the National Disaster Management Agency headquarters. And in that meeting, the following were the products: preparation for safe and dignified burial, observing COVID protocols. The Minister of Social Welfare was to lead the affected persons tracing and psychosocial support in consonance with the NDMA. The Minister of Social Welfare to coordinate interfaith and burial service. The Freetown City Council secured the site for the burial in Waterloo, in an area called Bolima, where we buried our mudslide and flood victims. Ministry of Health requested for blood donation from the public, and it was agreed that Bike Riders Association be engaged to determine missing persons or relations to missing persons. The DNA sampling of corpses was ongoing by the Ministry of Health. The food and nutrition pillar was tasked to provide special diet for the hospitalized. His Excellency the President visited the site that very morning. He addressed the nation as well, and he addressed people on the site. And in his address to the nation, he declared a 3 days national mourning. We received donations that day from the Chinese Embassy, assorted medical supplies, including 43 hospital beds. 8 of those were real customized hospital beds, and the 35 were folding beds. But that was very, very timely. And the ambassador pledged 500 million leones to be deposited into the disaster relief account. I saw him yesterday at the interfaith service, marking the end of the 3 days of mourning, and he told me they have paid the money into our account, but it has not been reflected yet. It takes maybe about 3 days or so. These are just pictures of our inter-pillar coordinating meeting that was held at our headquarters. And here, day 4. Day 4 actually was, the main effort on day 4 was the burial of the 75 deceased people that were affected by the fire. That was done on medical advice, on the advice of medical practitioners. And what you should know about these 75 deceased is that these people were burnt beyond recognition. There was no identity, you cannot identify them at all. On day 5, our coordination continued, because coordination is a continuous activity until we down tools. Our engagement with stakeholders to fast-track emergency response and receive donations continued. Community engagement to trace families of affected persons is ongoing. Affected persons continue receiving treatment at various public health units across the around Freetown. Minister of Health distributed drugs and assigned personnel to support the PHUs near the accident site, specifically the Rokupa hospital. The Minister of Health himself visited Rokupa. I'm sure he went there to ensure things were in place. The UN family also visited our incident command center at the accident site, so that they have a first-hand information of what occurred. We also received donations from the UAE at the airport. The Honorable Minister of Health and NDMA were there. That was an early rise for him that day. EU and the French ambassador, they promised to fly in specialized health personnel. They held a meeting with me in my headquarters, and we created the necessary contact between them and the Ministry of Health so that they can facilitate what they want to offer. US Embassy also made donations. King Ho donated food and non-food items to the National Disaster Management Agency. CTC also donated 525 kilogram bags of rice to NDMA. Lawyer Banja, Tijansi, and a law firm donated also from the college, and a series of others that I will not name. You know, it's a tall list. This is just a picture showing the community engagement. That's part of our ICC at the accident site. Some of our volunteers and the ICC commander is there, Director Sinema Sere. This was the receipt of the donations at the UAE donations at Lunge International Airport. And this was the UN family that visited the ICC. Day 6, community engagements to trace victims continued. We held in the second Interpillar coordination meeting, and in that meeting, we came up with the following. Food supplies at the hospital, especially 34 hospital, were running low, and there was need for high protein diets for the patients. That is what they need now mostly. Data and statistics should come from the Ministry of Health only. We should not get any data. That's very good for you, the members of the 40 states. Please make sure the data you display in your newspapers and the TV are those that you get from the Ministry of Health. It's very, very important, because we are getting so many figures out there and none of them is correct except what you get from the Ministry of Health. Public education on what is available and where for affected victims. What happened when the accident occurred? Some people with some injuries developed some fear that they were going to be arrested. So they were, as we say in Creole, pepper-doctoring themselves in some corners. Some went to the hospital at Rokupa, and immediately they were treated, they left the hospital. But we are now giving them confidence to come out and get treatment. And the Minister of Health has put so much in place for that. Media and CSO involvement in donations so that there is transparency throughout. Quantification of what is needed was also done, because we are getting so many donors and partners that are asking us for what is needed. And that can only come from the Ministry of Health. So we got it from them and we are transmitting that to those that are asking. Data to be disaggregated and consistent formats adopted in recording it. Livelihood support for families to start. These are things that we are going to start looking at to implement or to action. Mitigation meeting involving EPA, FCC, SLP, NFF, the Petroleum Regulatory Agency, also ASLAF, is ongoing. It has to be continuous because they have so much to do. On that day also, there was an interdenominational service held at State House to mark the end of the 3 days of mourning. We also received donated items from World Vision. These are pictures of the interfaith service that was held at State House. Now for the gaps and challenges facing the intervention. Expert personnel to do a detailed damage loss assessment. These are skills that these are skill sets that you need so that you capture the right people that are supposed to be captured. Because we are all seeing what is going on in the social media. People telling their relations, you must avoid Facebook for now, because we are going to enter your name. There is something that is going to be provided. That's dishonesty. No specialized burn units across the facilities for the patients, but honestly, the medical team are doing well with whatever skills they can display just to save lives. inadequate technical capacity for burns management, that's clinical, dietitians, plastic surgeons, and physiotherapists. But I think yesterday, the Honorable Minister said we're supposed to receive from personnel from Senegal that have some of these specialties to help in the management of the sick. Inadequate standby blood supply for large-scale casualties, inadequate trauma logistics supplies, and lack of capacity for DNA profiling in country. I don't want to dilate on the DNA issue. The Minister of Health, they will explain to us what they did so that at least they have some tissue samples taken for those that were not identified to try to match that with relations that will come forward in the future. The tasks ahead for the next 10 days, we will still continue to do contact tracing for survivors, contact tracing for missing persons, psychosocial support to affected persons and families. The AU has asked us to send a seat rep because we are linked to the situation room of the African Union. So we have to update them on the disaster and what is happening. Mitigating strategies to reduce risk, and those meetings have started already, and I've named the agencies or the ministries that will be doing that. But this one will also involve the communities and our community volunteers as well. So this is the general plan for the management of this disaster response. The response phase, as I said earlier, is between day 1 and 10. We'll make these ones available to you so that we don't take much of time. And after that, we'll go into the stabilization, relief, and early response. That will be between the 10th day or the 11th day to the 30th day. And then we'll continue the response and on to recovery. This touches on what we do. These are phases of disaster response. You know, when disasters occur, you have various phases you go through until you recover gracefully from it. We'll give you copies of this because some of them are futuristic. You know, there are things we plan to do in the future. It's a plan, and a plan is not written on stone. It can change depending on the situation. Over the period, and just to do justice to the letter we received from the Ministry of Information and Communication, over the period, we have been doing a lot of mitigation activities in Sierra Leone. And the reason why probably people think probably we are not doing mitigation activities is because we prevented most of these activities from going out or becoming a full-blown disaster by our actions. So we've been responding to citizen alerts. We have the volunteer system wherein citizens can call. We have the call line, our toll-free line, 1199, that was given to us by AFICEL. We have phones that were donated to us and that are on closed user. We are not paying for them, for any call you make on those phones, and those ones have been distributed to our volunteers so that they alert us if they sense danger in any of our prone or risk communities within Freetown, especially Freetown. And for your information, Freetown alone has over 60 high risk and prone areas, just Freetown. We've been training coastal communities for them to know early warning signs on the dangers that are imminent so that they bring it to our notice. Multi-stakeholder assessment and mitigation actions have been taken or been engaged in them over the period. Use of technology to do assessment, drones. We have our drone, and when we go out, we use the drone so that it gives us better visibility for informed decisions to be taken. Community outreach in disaster-prone communities, as I've said before, we go out there, we talk to them, especially through our volunteers. We work with partners, you know, ministries, departments, and agencies in risk reduction, like EPA, the Environment Ministry, National Protective Area Authority, settling up structures in the regions to mitigate risk. We have chiefdom disaster management committees We have people that are in those committees and they communicate with us. We talk with them frequently. Collection of data on incidents, hazards, and risks. And we publish those ones as well. These are some hazards that we prevented from becoming full-blown disasters over the period. There was this collapsed building at Kishi Road, and we were able to stop people from going into that building, and it was barricaded by the SLP, and it's provided 24/7 security. And we informed the line ministry, the Ministry of Works. They are responsible to ensure they bring that building down in a controlled manner. We also have the Congo Town slope failure, which where we went. You see Director Bangura and Director Levy there on site, and they gave the necessary advices and warning to people to evacuate the area, and that was done. The Bololo community, that was a building. People were still occupying that building in this form. So we went there and we got them out, you know, and that part of that building was demolished, and nobody is in that building as at date. And also we have a fractured rock at Mechem. We have informed the necessary authorities, the SLRA, Ministry of Works, and they have been engaging the community, and they are working on plans how to get rid of this fractured rock in a controlled manner so that it will not create any disaster. These are also hazards. We stopped excavation near a bridge in Moten. Somebody was excavating right there to build a house and compromising that very critical infrastructure, you know. So we had to stop that. We also stopped the construction of an embankment in Angola Town, the Angola Town Bridge. Somebody was there trying to do an embankment, and in that process, they will have blocked that water passage, and that will have created serious flooding in that area. We also saved the catchment in the Grafton area. Where you see the trees, there is a dam there. But over time, look at the amount of structures that have been constructed in that area. But we are trying to make sure we do not allow any more structures to come up, because that's a source of water for that community. And on the left of that, or on the south, sorry, on the south of that picture, you see the house of the former head of state, Captain Wellington, retired. And then somebody in the same Grafton community was digging a well very close to a bridge. We had to stop that as well. I came with copies of a research work that went on for about 3 years and is now completed. And that research work identified single points of failure. It was launched last month, and this was done in consonant with Bournemouth University of UK. It identified series of single points of failures that, if they are addressed, we might reduce the risk of disasters in this country. We are working on it. We have written the necessary letters to our supervising minister so that we take it forward. We are in touch with Bournemouth University on that. We also launched the disaster dictionary in languages, and that dictionary is in 5 languages. We came with 2 copies of that as well, so that you see. It's in Creole, Limba, Timne, Kono, and Mende, so that it makes our work easy when we go out and when we engage communities. We intend to proceed on with the work as we go. This was supported by UNDP, and we did it in consonance with...
Shoot them. You will shoot them.
Okay.
The camera.
Yeah, and we did it in consonance with other organizations. It's a very good reading material. And this is the report on the Bournemouth single points of failure that identified them. We have some copies. We'll make them available. We also partner. We do with the Sierra Leone Urban Research Center, and Director of Partnership and Research, Monitoring and Evaluation with them, so that we look at common areas we can partner to just take forward our mitigation activities. We also partner with institutes doing disaster risk mitigation courses to enhance knowledge. That is done mostly now through online. And we also release regular risk and hazard data collection and analysis. This was just pictures on the launch of the report on the single points of entry and the disaster risk reduction dictionary in 5 local languages. It's a very good read. We also, media man, you have been hearing him all over the place. We are also doing a lot of media engagements, regular media engagements on radio, TV, the print and social media, just to warn people, talk to people, and educate them on the signs that they should not play with if they see, areas they should not go. We also partner with AfriCell to launch the toll-free line which I mentioned earlier. We are partnering with Action Against Hunger to build on applications for early warning. And mitigation messaging is also messages are also given to communities that we respond to when we do our normal responses. Since our establishment on the 19th of November 2020, we have actually responded to 93 disasters across the country, from Mongobedu in the north to Yeliboya in the northwest, on to Gurama Kono, Tangama Gurama in the east. We have gone as far as Boidu and Tawe in the Kailan salient, the far east. We've gone as far as Ba and Solima in the south. And we've touched some areas within Putloko, Cambia, and Bombali districts. And we have some pending for Tompolili districts. And as for Freetown, you have you know about it, so many, especially fires. Mostly the disasters we respond to in Freetown are fires. And those up country are windstorms. Most of them are windstorms. These are also pictures of the engagement with AfriCell when they gave us the toll-free line and donated phones. We continue our coordination and collaboration. We have pre-positioned supply units across the country. We are in touch with the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces at their locations. And we are pre-positioning certain items of logistics just to shorten the line of communication when we have disasters across the country. We have we have a warehouse in McDonald and we have one in Putloko. The WFP ceded to us. They are the biggest logistics base, in fact, in this country, in Putloko. That is now ceded to us. And we have arranged with the Army to use their storage facilities in case there are emergencies. These are just pictures indicating that the handover of the logistics base to us. That's the first picture there. The second was a visit by the AU when they visited. The third there is our engagement, the one on the right, with the Chinese ambassador. And the last one there was a picture from our last coordinating meeting. That is the brief from me. I think it is better we take the Minister of Health brief and then we open ourselves to your questions, your clarifications, and your contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General. And that was exactly the plan, so that we will dispose of the presentations before we open up for the Q&A. So thank you very much for sharing with us interventions on the part of MDMA, but also giving us a sense of what the key challenges are. And we also favorably note the strides that you have made in updating the public and for the fantastic work that ELBA is already doing. And rest assured, the ministry stands ready to support your endeavor in that direction. As I indicated, we also would want to learn about the medical interventions made and how all this will be coordinated with our local and international partners. And the man who leads all of these efforts is the Honorable Minister of Health and Sanitation, Dr. Austin Dembe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Salman Jamir, my brother, General Sise, colleagues, members of the Fourth Estate. This is a very difficult situation for all of us in Sierra Leone, but it's also an opportunity for us to come together to act as one unified nation. I have the distinct honor of introducing my colleagues that are here with me today, who will be doing a lot of the talking. I think what I wanted to do was to just have some couple remarks. I have with me Dr. Mustafa Kaba. Dr. Kaba is a surgeon by training, one of the best in this country, but he also doubles as the incident command manager for the response from the health sector. Right next to him is Dr. Lawrence Sandy. He is the executive director for NIMS, the Logistics Program Office for the Ministry of Health. And right next to him is Dr. Batima, Moses Batima. He's the deputy at NIMSAT, but also he's volunteering to be the deputy incident commander for the health sector. In the back row, we have Mr. Frank Ikuruma, who's with us here, and he's a special advisor to the minister. Right next to him is our good friend, Lorenzo. And next to him is Mr. Harold Thomas, who you all are very familiar with. Colleagues, I would really focus on letting Dr. Kaba tell you what's going on in the medical response. But before doing that, I would like to just share a few things with you. The organizational structure is such that we all feed our input into the National Disaster Management Agency. But for us to do that effectively as a ministry, we also have to be organized, and that's why we have the incident command structure there. We also have a communications hub that's just been activated. It stood up yesterday in the ministry to help with some of the administrative issues. I'll just touch on three major things that would help set the stage for Dr. Kaba to come in. First, I want to take this moment to thank all healthcare workers, especially healthcare workers in the Western area, who rallied to respond to what happened on Friday night. Some people have had less than 2 hours of sleep a day. They're doing their very, very best. We've got very capable doctors, nurses, surgeons, who all deployed to be able to respond to this. People that were on leave gave up their leave to come in. People who were in other locations gave up that to come in and be responsive. So for that, we say thank you to them today. Having said that, it addresses the major issue about capability. We have very, very capable people. What we challenge is capacity. So people are able to do really good work now, but if you have 60, 70 patients to deal with, no matter how good you are as an individual, or 2 or 3 of you, you need help. And so we're very pleased that we're getting help from a lot of our colleagues around the world. The material support that you saw from WHO, the first 6.6 tons of supplies, was very, very welcome. It was very timely. And the other day we got about 15 tons of supplies from the UAE. That was also extremely welcome. And at the same time, we've had a lot of supplies, a lot of help coming domestically from within Sierra Leone, and also within our international partners. And I think all of this is going to be put to very good use as we manage these cases. I'd like to remind everybody, when the General made his presentation, he was telling you about the structures for responding to disasters. Here we have a situation where it involves human beings who have been burned. Some of them have been burned 80% of their body, 70% of their body, 60% of the body, some with first degree, second degree, and third degree burns. Their care is going to take a long time. So as we do all of this, let's just be mindful that there are different phases of the response from a medical standpoint that goes way into the future, because these people's care is going to be changing as the recovery evolves. So we're very pleased that we were able to get some of this material supplies from our colleagues. Right now we're very, very pleased that last night, 10, they added another person, 10 Senegalese experts were deployed to come and help us out. They include surgeons, they include nurses, they include critical care nurses, they include anesthesiologists, they include pharmacists, they include coordinators as well. So 10 of them arrived and we met them today. And the receiving office in our headquarters was able to manage their arrival. And now we're going to turn them over to Dr. Kaba and his operational team to work with them. Similarly, the EU is going to send a few surgeons for us, plastic surgeons. I think there should be about 2 of them and additional nurses. We expect them to arrive either today or tomorrow, and we'll be able to move them in Dr. Kaba's direction. At the same time, we're expecting some colleagues from the Sierra Leonean diaspora, Healthcare Sierra Leone. They're able to engage their American counterparts, and they're able to engage a very reputable burn expert team at Temple University. So with some help from UNDP, they actually deployed last night. They should be arriving today. A small team that will join Dr. Kaba and his colleagues to respond to this crisis that we have. So having said that, in terms of who's coming to help, we expect more people to come, we expect more material to come, we expect more expertise to come, because as I say, this care is evolving. You know, right now, we're not talking about rehabilitation. But if you have a burnt limb, you know, it's going to take years and years of going to try to use your hand again, try to use your leg again. So there will be changes in expertise that's going to be required for these people over time. I think having said that, it gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Kaba to come and give you an update from The only thing that's missing with Dr. Kaba right now is that he's not wearing a cape, a Superman cape, because he's our Superman, he's our hero, Dr. Kaba.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Health, Deputy Minister of Information. It's with great pleasure that I stand in front of the Sierra Leone people today to give a brief report as to the activities of the Ministry of Health in response to this fire incident that took place at Wellington a couple of days ago. The Ministry of Health and Sanitation has been highly engaged in ensuring that the lives of those ones who are involved in this activity are really preserved, and to make sure that the mortality rate is highly reduced. On that fateful day of the fire incident, a lot of people were involved that were brought to most of the big facilities in Western area, including Connaught Hospital, Rokupa Hospital, Troy Tram Hospital, 34 Military Hospital, and a few peripheral units. In total, from our statistics, 299 people were involved in this incident, and the incident was so that the severity of the injuries was so large that they required urgent treatment, urgent intensive care. For example, at the point where I was at Connaught Hospital on that day, we received over around 88 patients within 3 to 4 hours. And when these patients came, they came with severe injuries.
And there are so many that we were at the beginning even overwhelmed to know where to start and where to end. But we did our best, like the minister said. We were able to activate a lot of healthcare workers. They came, nurses, doctors around the Western area, and we were able to triage the patients, give them adequate treatment, ensure that they are properly handled. I must emphasize at this point in time that the treatment that has been ongoing from the onset in all health facilities is being sponsored by the government of Sierra Leone and its health partners. No patient, I repeat, has paid for treatment in these facilities up to date. So, immediately when this incident occurred, the Ministry of Health had a meeting wherein the National Public Health Response was escalated to level 2, and the incident management team was constituted, which I'm currently heading, deputized by Dr. Batima. The overall architecture is that the disaster management team, NDMA, is the overall boss. They are controlling everything, and we are working in close collaboration with them. We, as incident manager, the chief medical officer, we are represented in the overall coordination response at that level. But going down, we have our own coordination response with pillars that have been established. We have technical pillars, we have a case management pillar, we have surveillance pillar, nutrition pillar, risk communication, and the necessary pillars for such activities. Critical impact points that we might like to highlight are that 299 patients were received in all facilities. At the moment, we have 59 people currently admitted in 5 city hospitals. Destruction of property, including vehicles, business premises, have already been mentioned by NDMA. I will not go over that again. Critical for us also as health practitioners is to consider the air pollution that took place at that fateful day, destruction of vegetation and the surrounding environment, as well as social, economic activities of life of households within 1 kilometer from site. So the impact of this fire incident is yet to be assessed from the environmental specialists. Let me take you back to the critical figures I was stating for us to have this right. Total number of deaths we've recorded so far in Sierra Leone related to this fire incident is 138. We received on that day 84 corpses. These are people who are already dead before they arrived at the facility. And out of these 85, 75 of them were damaged beyond recognition. We have currently 54 deaths in all hospitals recorded in the Western area. We have 59 patients admitted in the 5 hospitals as follows: Connaught Hospital 28, Emergency Hospital 11, Troy Tram Hospital 6, 34 Military Hospital 10, Rokupa Hospital 4. We have been able to discharge patients during the course of these activities. Connaught Hospital discharged 29, Emergency 6, Troy Tram and Military Hospital are yet to discharge patients. The pillars and the activities, of course, like I stated, we have emergency operations coordination unit established, and also the Ministry of Health has recently established a coordinating unit for deployment of surge staff at the Ministry of Health, because like the minister said, we'll be receiving a lot of colleagues in country. We need to sort out their medical license, we need to sort out which hospitals they have to work at, and all of the rest. So if we have a coordinating unit that is engaged in that, then it will relieve the activities of the emergency response so that we concentrate on our work on treating patients. Surveillance team is also highly activated and motivated. They have been surveillancing in collaboration with the NDMA, and we have our data and it's ongoing, and we are releasing daily situation report. We have a toll-free line established, 117, which was the usual line, and it can be used by the general populace to ask questions about the fire incident or to report if you need an ambulance to come to a health facility. This line is open for the public. Our laboratory pillar is also activated, and we have been able to collect 75 samples from the severely injured patients that were born without visible recognition. So the specimen we are collected, these are tissue specimens from any part of the body, and these have been kept in specimen tubes, and they will be used for analyzing the DNA. And the DNA will be used now to cross-match with relatives who might claim that they lost loved ones during this fire incident. So this process is ongoing, and we have been able to establish that all the patients in all of the facilities receive free laboratory investigations. We do their full blood count, we do their electrolytes, and all what is necessary. Blood products are also being made available. We have a blood donor drive that's ongoing. We encourage the general public to donate blood to this activity. Points have been identified, like for example PCMH. We are working on Connaught Hospital and other areas to serve as blood donor points for these patients, because as we move on into these 5-6 days, we might see that they might become anemic, they need blood transfusions, and possible surgeries might need to be performed, and because of that, blood needs to be available. The shipment of tissue samples is yet to be done. We are coordinating with partners. We have a university in USA that we are working with so that these samples are sent for DNA analysis. The case management pillar is also activated, and they are doing a fantastic job in terms of the clinical management of the patients. We have set up teams of plastic surgeons, general surgeons, pediatric surgeons, physiotherapists, nutritionists, anybody who has something to do with bones, so that they do common ward rounds. They go together, they visit the patients and see the needs on a daily basis. And these guys are doing a fantastic job. And we also ensure that whatever is requested on that day is instituted in terms of logistics. We have our logistics pillar here, who has also been very helpful in this activity. Clinical protocols have been established in terms of handling burns patients. For example, all facilities should have a standardized protocol as to how much fluid intake these patients need. Because when you have burns, you lose a lot of fluids. This is one of the problems we have with these cases. So we have a protocol running across all the facilities. If you go to Connaught and Choitram and 34, they have to have the same protocols. So these ones have been established, and the situation report, like I said, had already been going out, and medium term for the case management pillar is to establish a burns unit, which we are, with your support, sir, we are working on. Safe burials have been conducted on 75 unrecognized bodies on the 8th of November. The tissue samples I've already spoken about. Food and nutrition, we have specialized feeding for the patients in these facilities, and it's ongoing. We, as clinicians, know that when you have burns, your calorie requirement, oral and nutritional feeding is very, very important. So we make sure that they have the required nutritional requirements per day. This is being calculated per body weight, per surface area of burns sustained, so that we have a formula at each facility and the patients are receiving the nutritional support they need. Of course, this is the SOP that has been established. Mental and psychosocial support is very important. On that day, it was a very tragic incident, and a lot of patients, including their family and loved ones, are traumatized by this incident. So the psychosocial support unit is very active in engaging the relatives, the patients themselves, and the rest of the community. And one other area we are also focusing is the engagement of the healthcare workers who were involved at that day, so that they can also have psychosocial support if the need arises. Risk communication, community engagement has also done a fantastic job in terms of engaging with interreligious council, supporting civil society organizations, and make sure that information is disseminated from one source to the public in terms of this fire incident. So, in terms of medical logistics, we had, like I said initially, when the incident occurred, we opened up all our stores in the hospitals, in the government hospitals where the patients were. The stores were open. Let's hold on 1 minute. It was good, so I breathed. I have time to breathe out. Yeah, that was a good interruption. Thank you very much, Aaron. So we continue. On that day when the incident occurred, we had to open up all our pharmacies, all our stores in all major government hospitals where this patient came to. And we supplied drugs, IV fluids, things that were necessary. We had to ask the NEMSA boss, Dr. Lawrence Sandy, to supply us. He was there on site also. And we made sure that all the patients received the emergency medications they needed. And moving forward, we have been receiving tremendous amount of contribution and donations from the society, civil society, institutions, well-meaning Sierra Leoneans. Even though time is against us, but I would like to say this, I'm really, really impressed as to the support we've been receiving as a hospital and a management team on this disaster. One thing I would like to say, there was a child, he's 9 years old, right? He came with his mom to donate milk. So when they came, I asked, where did you get this money from? They said, I used my money my mother used to give me to my lunch money I've been saving aside. But when I saw this incident, I thought I have to give back and help these people. This is something I've never seen before in this country, and it is something we should work together in ensuring that it continues this way so that we support ourselves when we have situations like this. I'm really, really happy about this, what's happening. And what we assure the people of Sierra Leone is that all these donations that are being given to Connaught Hospital, 34 military hospital, and the other facilities are properly being documented. We have a statistic on it and how they are being used, and this one will make public at any time. Our secretary has been collecting the data and even issuing out to people to know, so that they know that the items they are bringing into these facilities are used for the intended purposes. We have been working on establishing a comprehensive needs assessment and gap analysis, which will possibly be completed through the logistics team, so that we can see how we plan for the next coming days, receive donations from WHO and UAE. Critical activities planned, we need crucial specialists have been requested through our partners, and now we are receiving them. Like the team from Senegal, we are receiving more, as the minister said. The DNA profiling is ongoing. Medical logistics have been solicited. We have a comprehensive survival support plan. It's being developed by the case management pillar for further approval through the rights authorities. Moving forward, what we have in mind is to make sure that the case management pillar is properly equipped with what they need, to make sure that we assess the patients on a daily basis. We have about 12 patients who are really in critical condition at the moment, fighting for their lives in all of these 5 hospitals. And these are the patients we are really focusing on making sure that we save those lives, even though the extent of injury that they sustain is almost not compatible with life. But we are trying to do our best as Sierra Leoneans, with our partners, with the support we are getting, to ensure that these patients' lives are safe. I think this is the last slide, and I thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, and perhaps as a sign of gratitude to the efforts made so far on the part of MDMA, on the part of the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, on the part of all Sierra Leoneans and partners, I ask us kindly as Sierra Leoneans to give another round of applause. Indeed, very difficult times for all of us. And as I listened to Dr. Kaba, I think what we owed to those we lost to the disaster was dignified burial, and that we continue to carry them in our hearts and in our national memory. And what we owe to the ones in hospital across different conditions, critical, less critical, moderate perhaps, we owe them the best care. And I believe that is what is being offered. As I indicated, the Director of Communications for National Disaster Management Agency is here, who is not new to all of this. As a matter of fact, since this happened, as we continue to follow him in the different outlets, he's been doing a lot of the media heavy lifting. He's very much connected to all of this, media, public relations wise. And it is my pleasure to bring on Mohammed Elba to kindly come and coordinate the Q&A session for today's press briefing. Elba.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, the Director General of National Disaster Management Agency, the Minister of Health and Sanitation, Dr. Dembi. Briefly, we are now going to the question and answer session. As usual, we take 5 questions, for first round, and you start with your name, your institution, and of course you go straight to your questions. We'll take 5 at a time, please. And we're only doing that, you do twice. So you ensure you ask your questions directly. And your questions should be related to the presentation done, please. So,
Thanks, Mike.
all right, okay.
Yeah, I'm Ahmed Kumar of the Washington newspaper. Mr. Minister of Health, can I ask you? In your statement, you said a loaded truck hit a loaded fuel tanker leading to the leakage, and the insurance companies exonerated from paying costs to the suspects and the bereaved families. My next question is for the Director General of the retired Brahmasise. The last time you were here with us was after the Susan Bay disaster. Each time there's a disaster, we to say, or better me to say, we'll say the same theory, we'll say the same bureaucracy, we'll say the same information. The public has urged me to ask you, sir, why can't we use 16 local musicians with 16 local languages to keep on singing your song in order to contain the huge task you spend, the huge money you spend in your risk reduction activities? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
I am Adeyemi, and I work for Freedom Media. My question is to the Minister of Health and Sanitation. Mr. Minister, the fire disaster at Wellington a few days ago seemed to expose our country's weak health system. Looking at the first presentation on the gaps and challenges, some of the points highlighted, if you just permit me to name 2. No specialized burn units across the facilities caring for patients, inadequate technical capacity for burns management, etc., etc. This is not the first time we have had similar fire disaster. I think long years back we have had similar one at Shell and across the country. My question is, Mr. Minister, what are you doing in terms of setting up proper health system in terms of personnel and facilities, so that at the end of the day, in future, if we had similar thing, we will not continue to rely on countries or organizations to come to our aid, but rather we have the expertise and facilities to address some of these cases at once. Thank you.
Yes, Banya. Yeah, Banya.
Mohamed Amin Banya from AYV. I think it's just an addendum to what colleagues previously here. My question is directed to NDMA and the DG. Subsequent governments in Sierra Leone are more or less more focused in the response than mitigating measures. The last time I think it was at Motomea and some other places. Now it's at Wellington. What are some of the steps or strategies are you going to put to mitigate these measures? Other is to the Minister of Health, Dr. Dembi. I learned that you set to conduct DNA tests also on the victims. I want to know how far you have gone with it, and also during the presentation, they did not mention how many children were involved in this disaster. If they were involved, how many of them, and what is of their case now? Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Lai Jackson. I'm reporting for CTN. I stand to be corrected that this particular disaster that occurred in our country is a first. So I want to know what the agency has put in place for the occurrence of this kind of disaster in the country.
That's the last question for the first round. Let's go on.
Hassan Almani Kananga, independent observer. We did got it from